Hi, I'm Scott Humphrey, CEO of the World Floor Covering Association, and this is Leadership Live. When you hear the words analysis paralysis, what comes to mind? I think about leaders who are afraid to pull the trigger, who get caught up in doing it right so much that they don't do it at all. Oftentimes, these leaders don't fail to act, they just fail to act soon enough, and their competition jumps ahead of them. It's easy during times like this when there's a pandemic and it seems like everybody has a hunker down mentality to join in. But the reality is this is the greatest opportunity to stand out. Choose to act when everybody else is choosing to stay put. I love the story of General Stonewall Jackson in this famous Valley campaign. He finds himself on one side of a river and needs to move himself, his troops, his artillery, and everything to the other side of the river. So he calls his engineers together and tells them that they need to build a bridge, and he needs a plan for building a bridge and needs it built as soon as possible because the next battle will be on the other side of the river. After talking to them, they retreat to a tent and begin planning. He then goes over to his wagon master and explains that they're going to need to move everything to the other side of the river as soon as possible. That means the artillery, the troops, the wagons, everything. The wagon master doesn't fully understand what's being asked, so he immediately begins to throw stones and logs and fence rails and everything he can find into the river, and he builds a bridge. By the next morning, he goes back to General Jackson and says, listen, everything has been moved to the other side. Artillery, troops, everything is there. And Jackson says, well, where are the engineers? To which the wagon master replies, I think they're still in the tent planning on how to build the bridge. If all we do is plan and never act, then there's no growth, not only for us, but for those who look to us for leadership. Imagine the first time a child falls. They've been crawling and they try to stand up, and when they stand up, they aren't able to balance and they fall. What if we encourage them to just stay where they are and to continue crawling? There would be no growth because there is no action. Action leads us to development and ultimately, in that case, to independence. One of my favorite stories is about a young man by the name of Billy Bob. Billy Bob loved to fish. He would go down to the bait shop every day and they would talk about who had succeeded in fishing and what they had caught. And Billy Bob seemed to be catching everything and nobody else seemed to be catching anything. Well, one day the game warden happened to be down there while they were talking, and Billy Bob is sharing how many fish he has caught, and the game warden gets a little suspicious and he says, well, Billy Bob, I'd like to fish with you tomorrow and just see how you're having all this success when nobody else is having success. And Billy Bob says, no problem. Meet me at the house at 6. We'll load the boat up and we'll go. Well, that's exactly what happens. They go out the next day. They've been out on the lake for probably a couple hours. Water level's down, been a bit of a drought, and nothing is being caught. And then the game warden hears a sound behind him. Sss. He looks over and Billy Bob has lit a stick of dynamite. He commences to throw that dynamite out into the water, and when it explodes, fish are flying everywhere, and Billy Bob is just raking them into the boat. While he's doing that, you can imagine the game warden goes nuts and says, Billy Bob, you can't do that. That's against the law. Highly, highly illegal. And while he's complaining, Billy Bob lights another stick of dynamite and hands it to the game warden and says, are you going to talk or are you going to fish? Listen, we need people that are going to fish. And I challenge you that when everybody else is hunkering down, that's the right time to act. Listen, planning is important. Analysis is important. But when it binds you, when the fear of failure keeps you from being willing to act, then it's a problem. So let me ask you a question. Are you going to talk? Or are you going to fish? Now go out there and lead.